a little bit of our Sunday classic, which was Ghostface Killa's Supreme Clientele, which was released by Epic in 2000, and on Sunday got a perfect 10 in a review by Jeff Weiss. Now, I know we normally don't do this, but I'm sure many of the listeners at home are anxiously awaiting what I might be giving an album like this. And so we're going to give Gabe and Dan one chance to take one guess at what I rated this album, and then at the end of our review, I will reveal it, and the winner will actually win a point on our game, because we're just not going to have enough time tonight to do that.
Yeah, it does seem like the kind of thing you could either love or hate. You have a pretty checkered history with rap albums.
Yeah, really.
Especially classic rap albums. I'm going to guess... God damn, it's really hard. I'm going to guess you give this a 9.5.
I do not have the confidence in Darren. I don't think he'll go high. So I'm going to go lower here. I'm going to say that he's giving it a 6.5.
All right.
Interesting. Well, let's get into a little bit of background. We couldn't possibly do justice to Weiss's insanely detailed and surprisingly literary review of this album, so we'll try to run through just the essential background information here. And that review is definitely worth a read. Basically, the Wu-Tang Clan dominated hip-hop throughout most of the mid-90s. Their 1993 debut, Enter the Wu-Tang 36 Chambers, is widely considered one of the best rap albums ever, and every first-wave Wu solo album is also considered a classic of the highest order. This includes Method Man's Tikal from 1994, Old Dirty Bastards' Return to the 36 Chambers from 1995, Raekwon's Only Built for Cuban Links, which is also in 1995 and prominently features Ghostface, GZA's Liquid Swords from 1995, and Ghostface's own Iron Man from 1996. What a run.
Woo!
It was a good year to be alive, or a good couple of years there.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately, the Wu's second album as a group, Wu-Tang Forever from 1997, and all of the second-wave solo albums were major critical and commercial disappointments, owing somewhat to a flood that destroyed all of Wu mastermind RZA's gear and beats. Many declared the empire over, and the pressure was on Ghostface to deliver a sophomore LP worthy of the Wu name. Adding to the difficulty of the task, Ghostface was embroiled in legal troubles throughout the late 90s and even served a short prison sentence during the recording of Supreme Clientele. He was also in very poor health, mostly due to a mismanaged diabetes, and he sought treatment from a bush doctor in Benin, Africa. This trip became something of a spiritual pilgrimage for Ghostface, and it inspired a significant change in his lyrical approach. Luckily, RZA was highly involved in the project. Numerous producers worked on the album, but RZA remixed and tied everything together. The cohesiveness and inventiveness of the production, as well as Ghostface's new lyrical inspiration, both earned universal acclaim back in 2000, but Pitchfork might be the first publication to declare Supreme Clientele a 10 out of 10 classic. So, what is your previous familiarity with Ghostface? And I suppose you should probably talk about Wu-Tang, along with this album in particular.
I'm a huge fan. Longtime listeners will know that I saw Wu-Tang, talked about it on the podcast, saw Ghostface by himself on the podcast. The computer this is being recorded on, it's got a Wu-Tang sticker on it. I love the Wu-Tang, and I love Ghostface.
Yeah, same. Been deeply obsessed for a very long time. I think every single one of those like first wave solo albums are like up near 10 out of 10. They're just one of my favorite groups. I've listened to even all of their like really bad albums and all of the bad solo albums. Deeply obsessed with them. And of course, this album is an obvious highlight of that like ridiculously rich discography. What about you, Darren?
I'm a big fan of that first album. I didn't really get into it at the same time that you guys did. It was like much later, but I mean, it's just undeniable. But then as far as like the first wave solo albums, I've listened to maybe about half, like actually listened to them closely. And, that would be like Raekwon and GZA, and both of those I do like a lot. But this is really my first Ghostface album. I haven't listened to Iron Man.
And you hadn't listened to this album before? This is like your first
time
experience?
First experience,
wow.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So let's get into it. How would you guys describe the sound?
So I was struggling with how I might try to describe this. I mean, you kind of got to know like RZA's production. I mean, a lot of people worked on this. Definitely you can hear that RZA like redid everything in his mold. But obviously the people that were working on it were like disciples of RZA's very unique production style. But there's like a clear, just that classic RZA sound to it. Although there's something a little bit different just in like the weird, I don't know, there's something like kind of extra low, like extra gritty about the beats. Like even though there was something like murky and dark about the earlier RZA productions, but this has like a bright, aggressive, like really crisp, but also really like lo-fi crunchy kind of vinyl sound. It's very, aggressive and in your face musically. I think lots of soul samples. It's big sounding while being minimal in that classic RZA sense. I guess we should just try to handle the production for now. What would you add to that, Dan?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, pre-flood RZA, a lot of that murkiness and darkness was because everything was analog, on tape and stuff. Then, after flood, it becomes, Bobby Digital, and everything starts, being digital. But he's still like, I guess, tried to keep a bit of that murkiness. So it's like a digital version of like analog murkiness, which is cool, and I really wish he would have stuck with that past this record and whatnot. But yeah, you can definitely feel RZA's fingerprints on every single track, even the ones he didn't officially produce. You could tell he had that director sense about him, and I think that's what made all the classic Wu-Tang stuff was him being that being the abbot and taking care of everything instead of letting it slip like he did later on.
And it's very Kanye-esque, like the way that this album was made, in the sense that lots of producers came in and he sort of made it come together. Yeah,
and I mean, Kanye has said, many times that RZA is one of his, biggest inspirations. I mean, Kanye's famous for those chipmunk soul things, and RZA's been doing that since 1992 or whatever. Yeah. So, you can see it.
All right, how would you describe the production, Darren?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with what Dan was saying. You can hear a lot of that kind of influence in Kanye's music for sure. But for me, I was sort of surprised that this album came out in 2000. Like I didn't know that when I first started listening to it. It sounded, fairly similar to what I would have imagined any of those first wave solo albums sounding like. And I mean, I guess that is kind of just attributed to RZA's production skills. I didn't really know about the flood or any of that, or not recording on analog, but to me it seemed to fit right in. There was definitely a different take on it.
You can hear like the digital side of it. Right?
Yeah. Now that I think about it, I can certainly hear that. But I guess just like beats wise, sort of, I guess my expectations coming to this, like it seemed to be hitting a lot of those, those beats that I sort of expected. Not that I wasn't like impressed by them, because I thought they were all great, but.
Yeah, there's something else interesting about the production of this, which is that we have like a lot of tracks and a lot of like very short tracks. It's like a strange album. It's kind of amazing that it does feel so cohesive, because it feels like we're constantly changing, or like sometimes, it's just a track is created out of like a small idea that I think like RZA and Ghost just knew would only be interesting for like a minute and a half or something, and so they just do that.
Yeah, a perfect example, Saturday Night. That track's a minute and a half ish, and it's going, and then it just has that Iron Man cartoon breakthrough thing, and that could be corny on a lot of other things, but I really think it worked here fairly well.
Yeah, so let's try to talk about the lyrics then, because I think that is where this album's classic status really lies. How would we describe the lyrics, the rapping on this?
The lyrics are hard to describe. It's I took the time and read along on Genius.
I did too.
Yeah, which I had never done before, and
I know.
I thought, when I did that, I thought, like, how the fuck does he do these songs live? Like, how's he remember all this? Because nothing makes any sense. There's like rarely a full sentence. It's just kind of like,
yeah,
it should be awful. Like, it's like. It's just like verbal, like, diarrhea. He's just like spitting out so many ideas in as many lines. But
yeah, it's interesting, right? That it's kind of like we just talked about Kool Keith on Dr. Octagon, and it's a similar lyrical approach. Like, it's quite abstract.
I think this one's more abstract, though. You listen to Dr. Octagon, and I think you can get the story without reading along. This one, I mean, you don't have to read along. It's still a great album, but I think if you really think back and you'll say, fuck, I didn't understand any, like, anything that was being said by Ghost this entire record.
Yeah, let me read. I prepared a little sample. I think I got it from $1.50 or something, but this will just give you a sense. I just took a snippet after a couple N-words, so I wouldn't accidentally read an N-word. Here we
smart.
go. Okay.
It's very smart.
Don't do a Bill Maher, please.
No, I know. God. Okay.
Topical.
All up in the parrot, nose numb, real as they come, Biggie's Versace, Snow White Rabbit, hands is like photographic magic, funeral love, move in when we hug, don't make it a habit, hit the gym for 2 weeks, my back all chiseled, elbows unique, now me, the new me, Ghetto Fabulous, Tone Atlas, Zulu Nation in the 80s in front of Macy's. I start my own chapters, Tycho Nightglow, Velvet Pose, special effects, high-tech armors, murk you at the shows, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, docious super, Cancun, catch me in the room eating grouper.
It's so great. It's so great. I love the hit the gym for a week. My back is chiseled after just 1 week.
All right, Darren, try to describe this. Like, what the hell is going on?
I'm so glad. I was worried you were going to turn it to me first. And I'm like, what am I going to say? Because I don't think I really understood. I mean, just little things like the supercalifragil, that whole thing stands out.
He says it backwards.
Yeah, it's impressive that he can do that backwards.
Oh, I know. I was like, damn.
I can't do it forwards.
Yeah, exactly.
I know.
Like, very impressive.
He genuinely sounds like somebody who's like so overflowing with ideas that he can't like sit still on anything. Like, it doesn't sound random. It just sounds like his brain is moving much faster than ours can comprehend. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's ADHD rap.
Yeah, but not like I wouldn't even call it that. I would call it like, some, I don't know if we want to carry on the wu-tang thing, like some like kung fu master who's speaking in riddles or something, and you're like,
yeah, that's
amazed at his wisdom, but you have no idea what's being said. Like, I don't get how it doesn't sound like just nonsense trash.
Yeah, it really should, but it like doesn't at all.
Well, I mean, I think his delivery is what is like kind of killer throughout the entire album. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I forget like what he's actually saying, but like he just says it with such, I don't know. It's like it gives it so much meaning, even though there's really not any meaning to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. He really does sell it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was interesting, right? That like when we talked about Kool Keith, I kind of compared it to Naked Lunch, which was like this sort of like abstract, raunchy, like surreal stream of consciousness thing. And then the reviewer of this album compared it to Ulysses by James Joyce, which is, pretty crazy. But it's not a bad analogy. Like, it's so hard to read, but you get the sense that like something is being said, and if you like worked very, very hard, you would crack the code or something and begin to understand it. It sounds like a stream of consciousness, but one that's like rooted in reality somewhere. It's just like his slang is so intense. His ideas are moving so fast, like in a genuine, like you're reading inside somebody's brain kind of way. I mean, it's like, it's dizzying. This is like next level lyrical prowess. It's like post making sense.
Yeah, I agree. It's not random in the sense that like he just took a bunch of words out of the dictionary and stuck them together.
Right.
It is like something like Ulysses or Naked Lunch, where like if you dig into it, you can find the meaning there. but you got to put in the effort. But it's enjoyable, without putting in the effort as well. Don't think this is some thing you're gonna have to like really dig into. This is a record, half of it, maybe more, is been living on the banger playlist since day one. This is an album that I keep saved like offline on my phone. Can't think of something to listen to, whatever. Supreme Clientele is just always a great thing to put on. So it's weird that it can be both of those things. It can be so dense, but also perfect for just surface listening.
Yeah, it is. It's bangers. Now, okay, so I guess you won't be spoiling anything, Darren, to talk a little bit about how you did with this.
Well, I kind of fell in love with it.
Ooh,
yeah,
it's looking good for me.
I'm glad, but I'm not glad.
I mean, like I said, pretty much every Wu-Tang or solo album that I've actually put time into, I've come away liking a lot, but this one sort of like surprised me. It just, like I mentioned his delivery throughout. Like I love the way he raps. I don't know how to necessarily compare that all. Although I
don't
could
get
say
when he
like,
breathes.
It's like 1,000 times better than Jay-Z.
Oh, yeah. Whoa! Okay.
Because like he just, I don't know. When I listen to something like this, like Wu-Tang, like they're mean. Like they just sound intimidating. You know what I mean? No matter what they're rapping about, it's just like they are. It's so passionate. It's so like they're like going hard. I don't know how else to like describe it. Whereas Jay-Z just seems a little more. He seems more like finesse and like more refined and all that. Whereas like Ghostface is just in your face the whole time.
Yeah, I mean they're unique. The whole gang is so unique, and it is worth mentioning that like Wu-Tang from the very start has a certain level of like abstract like surrealism, especially like ODB and stuff. I would say this is like next level for sure though, and it's interesting, he had this like sort of transformative experience in Africa or whatever, but he has sort of left behind like all of the mafioso stuff that he was doing with Raekwon, a lot of like the more overtly gangster stuff, like all the materialism is gone. It's just like pure abstract like word art, not in the Microsoft Word sense, but like art with words or something. It is amazing, and it's really aggressive. He sounds like incredibly inspired. I don't know, what else can we say about this incredible record?
Yeah, I mean, we could go on and on and on just gushing about it, but I think we've touched on it pretty handedly. So that score, 10, they're calling a perfect 10. Like Darren said in the intro, the Pitchfork's kind of one of the first publications to give it that perfect 10. Everyone's given it like good scores. I've got the Wikipedia up here. Village Voice giving it A-. Rolling Stone, always good for rap reviews, gave it a 3.5 star. NME gave it a 7 out of 10. But Pitchfork is the first one of any significance, at least, really, to call this a 10 classic. So, do you each agree with that?
Well, it's interesting because I mean it's came out in 2000, so it's basically so recent that there hasn't been a lot of like looking back at it. It's usually like around the 20-year mark that people start to do that with records, and I think like in the like the people, the common man knows this is like a 10 out of 10, but it just hasn't been established in that like publication way yet. And Pitchfork has kind of, jumped the gun by a couple of years to be there first. I suspect everybody, come the 20-year anniversary will be saying this is like basically, a stone cold classic. And I agree completely. I mean, I wouldn't hate anybody who said this was their favorite Wu-Tang album, and that tells you all you need to know.
No, I completely agree with you. This is up there for being a favorite Wu-Tang album, a favorite solo album. It's maybe my second or third favorite solo record from the Wu-Tang. I completely agree with that 10. It's a classic, deserves to be, and I think as time goes on, more and more people will realize that. So, Darren, it's up to you now to give it a 6.5.
Drum roll.
Some points.
Yeah, just to sort of completely come out of nowhere and say, 6.5. Yeah, so the moment of truth. I mean, look, I rarely have I ever done this, but I was so kind of blown away by this album. I was so like enamored by it. I've been listening to it like nonstop that I cannot deny that this is a 10. It's a 10 out of 10. And it's my right now, it's my favorite Wu-Tang solo album. I haven't listened to them all, so you gotta check that out. But
love to hear it. I'm updating my points right now.
This is the one time I'm kind of glad to have lost that game. I'm proud of Darren. He's finally seeing the light. He's getting into Ghostface. Jay-Z's up next.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
And then it's Young Thug and Gucci Mane. I'm gonna have him.
Oh yeah,
trapping by the end
straight
of the
line right there. That's
no, but I just wanted to add, like, I this is what I wanted Pitchfork to do with the Sunday Classic review. Is like
the actual review, like the writing.
Oh yeah, so the review is great, but just with this whole thing that they're doing, like, nobody gives a shit about like Sade's third album or whatever. And, it's like, look back at albums, like declare albums classics that we haven't quite gotten there yet. You know what I mean? Like be the first one to say, yeah, this album that we all sort of grew up with. Yeah, it's a 10, like that's much more interesting to me than what they are usually doing.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I wish they would do the writing. The writing in this one was fantastic. It was like those 33 and a third books about albums.
Right. Yeah,
I love those. I read them all the time, and this was like a mini one of those. In fact, Jeff Wise, if you're listening, write a 33 on Supreme Clientele. I'd love to read it. I wish they would do more reviews. That were as interesting.
To hear the rest of our discussion, check out our website, metaforkmusic.com, or search us out on iTunes, Metafork Music.